seller Hindenburg has attempted to mount another hit job on the Indian equity ecosystem yesterday, with the SEBI chairperson Madhabi Puri Buch at the center of their latest attack. The suspense they hoped to build up was apparent with the first cryptic tweet from the short seller, where they say, "Something big soon, India." Now, the something big turned out to be a punctured attempt at trying to equate investments made by Madhabi Puri Buch and her husband Dhaval Buch in 2017 with their previous hit job on the Adani Group. The crux of the allegation is Madhabi and Dhaval Buch invested in a fund run by IIFL, now called 361 WAM. This same fund features in Hindenburg's previous allegations against the Adani Group. So, do 2 plus 2 make 44? Clearly not. What's even more flimsy in these latest allegations is drawing a connection between the SEBI chairperson's investments in 2015, when she had nothing to do with SEBI, and her current investigations. What's even more bizarre is that there is no attempt to hide the fact that Hindenburg is upset with a show cause notice handed to them by SEBI in June and is retaliating to it with this personal attack. It also becomes clear that Hindenburg is doing what it does best, taking short positions in the Indian market and then creating circumstances for the market to fall, essentially manipulating Indian investors for their own gains. The question is, has this round of the Hindenburg hit job been punctured? Well, the latest hit job clearly is done to avoid answering SEBI's show cause notice. These are some of the big questions that we're asking today. Allegations have been punctured by Madhabi and Dhaval Buch's response. That's very clear. Also, we're asking, why should a private citizen's investments be questioned? Remember, Madhabi Puri Buch has had a long and very fruitful career in the private sector. What she does with her money as a private citizen, why does it come into the picture right now? Where is the link between 2015 investments and current investigations? Isn't this a desperate attempt to spook Indian investors for Hindenburg's gains? Now, here's how we're going to explain it. My colleague Vishwanath Nair joins us in this special conversation. And Vishy, let's just look at two sets of statements that have come out in the last 24 hours since the first set of allegations came in. And let me just tell our viewers, we're going to break things down for you factually. So you take a look and come to your own decision. Let's look at the latest statement issued by Madhabi and Dhaval Buch and what 361 WAM has said. Put that in conjunction with what Hindenburg's allegations are. And their allegations are essentially, you invested in a fund which we claim was used to cover up some funding by the Adani Group. So, two entities, one fund.
Yeah.
How does this get punctured?
Right. So, as these statements, we go through what the statements that 361 as well as Madhabi Puri Buch and Dhaval Buch have released. And the point about this investments and funds and them being used here and there, right? Now, the allegation is that Madhabi Puri Buch and her husband invested in a fund, which then invested in some other fund where Vinod Adani was allegedly participating. And this is the connection between the two sets of people, right? So the first response to that Madhabi Puri Buch as well as 361 have claimed is that they have never, in the history of this fund was active between 2013 and 2019. In that period, they've never invested in any Adani Group-related equity, any bonds, any derivative instruments linked to the Adani Group. That's one thing that they're making very, very clear. First and foremost, they point out, Madhabi Puri Buch as well as Dhaval Buch point out, that they invested in this IP Plus fund simply because Anil Ahuja was managing that fund, and Anil Ahuja is a close friend of Dhaval Buch, and that's why they went ahead and invested in their money into this. Much before, at least a month before Madhabi Puri Buch is appointed as whole-time member at SEBI, she transfers all the ownership of this entire investment to her husband's name, because that is what typically executives do. Whenever they are appointed at an important government position, they will not hold any direct interest in any kind of major financial investment, simply because it these kind of questions can be raised in the future. The other point is that in 2018, when Anil Ahuja left IP Plus, when he left 361, at that point in time, they diluted their holdings. They took their money out of this fund because the money was kept there simply because of a childhood friendship. And since that friend was no longer an employee of the fund, there was no reason to continue with the investment. The other important point here is that this 361 statement clearly clarifies that at its peak, this IP Plus fund had an AUM of about $48 million, of which 90% was invested in bonds. So there was no question of any equity investment that is happening through this fund in the period that this fund was alive. A lot of the allegations were also pointed at Dhaval Buch's employment by Blackstone, and that Blackstone had in some weird fashion had gained because of Madhabi Puri Buch being SEBI chairperson. Now, his appointment happened before she became a SEBI chairperson. So it's not like Blackstone knew beforehand that this person's wife is going to be SEBI chairperson, so let's appoint him at our company. The other part is that she has maintained clear distance from any kind of REIT investigation, REIT-related regulation and investigation. These clarifications have already been provided to all relevant authorities. These are all part of the statement that these two individuals have put out now.
Okay, so these are all of the statements that have been put out. But you have to see this as part of a bigger sort of pattern. Why is this coming up now? Why Madhabi Puri Buch at the center of these allegations at a time when she has been hitting the headlines for taking a tough stance as a regulator against a whole host of stakeholders in the Indian capital markets? The latest being what's happening with derivative volumes. Is that why she's at the center of all of this? Sanjay Asher, senior partner at Crawford Bailey, joins us on the show. I'm speaking with Sandeep Ghosh. He's a current affairs commentator and business leader, and someone who knows Dhaval Buch very, very closely, has worked with him as well. Vikas Khemani, founder of Carnelian Asset Management and Advisors, joins us today. We're speaking with Jay Anant Dehadrai, advocate in the Supreme Court, and also Sunil Subramaniam, market veteran, speaking with us. I'm going to focus on the markets aspect of it first. Let me come to Vikas Khemani and Sunil for this, because remember, this has all come out over the weekend. Monday, the markets are going to open. And if you look at what's happening in markets otherwise, the handover from global markets has been quite positive on the Asia front as well as the US front. All things considered, it's a good setup for Indian markets. We saw that happening on Friday. Vikas Khemani, is this something that you see impacting markets come Monday morning?
Tamanna, first of all, I think, I strongly, sort of condemn what Hidenburg has done. I think it's a completely propaganda-oriented, release they have done, completely baseless and trying to manipulate the facts to just establish a chaos in a market. I'm sure, Hidenburg has lost its credibility many times. You announce first day something is coming on India, then you could come something like this. And if you read the press release by the chairperson, it's clearly there are facts which are there. Just because you invest into a fund does not mean that there's some quid pro quo, and it's very clean. Around that, if you can create some narrative, it just clearly shows the intention of the people who release behind that. And I think it is not new to us. We have seen this time and again happening. And it's a high time, in my opinion. Of course, I'm 100% sure that markets won't react at all to this tomorrow. So you can be rest assured on that. That I have zero doubt on that. But more important point I want to make it is, I think if we have to put rest to these kind of agencies or these kind of firms which have no stake in India or have a vested interest in India, we have to stop doing these kind of shows and giving importance to them, credence to them, saying that what you say matters. It's just a mess. More and more we talk about it. I think these kind of people get credibility, and they just keep on releasing baseless and stupid these kind of narratives, and which I think, in my opinion, is just targeted. So I completely don't agree that there will be any impact on the markets tomorrow. I think it will be normal, if at all. I think, and markets have time and again shrugged off what's happening in the Western world. India is a great story, and I again want to say this one thing very clearly. Our regulators, they have done far, far, far better job than any regulator around the globe. I think we are on a governance standard. People who talk about governance everywhere else, I think Indian regulator has done a great job on the governance, improving our governance over the last 10, 20 years. And I can tell you, we are one of the most advanced regulated market in the world, whether it is, same-day settlement to to AI-driven surveillance. I don't think any market can boast of the kind of infrastructure we have built, the kind of transparency we have built, governance structure we have built. And despite that, a nefarious agency just comes and makes some stupid comment, and we look up and start questioning our own system and have a discussion around that. I think it's a high time that we stop this. And that's the only way to, I think, take away credibility from firms like this.
Vikas, think about it this way: markets really don't care about sentiment. They look at what is expected to happen. They make very clear business decisions, or decisions based on the facts in front of them. If markets do react negatively to this tomorrow, and it's possible that they could initially, Hindenburg makes a ton of money. If you look at Hindenburg's statement, the end of it says very clearly that anyone reading this should assume we have short positions. We do that before every report. They did that before the earlier report as well. So a negative opening for the Indian markets tomorrow makes Hindenburg and its clients rich, isn't it?
So markets will prove them wrong tomorrow. You see tomorrow that I think markets will clearly ignore that, because there's no base in this. I mean, it's just a clear agenda-driven stuff. So when somebody is doing, it's like, let's say, if I'm short on a company and I just start creating something, people will give credibility to me once, twice, and then people will be clear that I'm an agenda-driven guy, and hence my credibility will be lost. And I think after this, in my opinion, Hindenburg has lost its credibility completely, and the firm has lost its credibility elsewhere as well. But in India, I think it's lost credibility completely, and you will see tomorrow how markets will completely put this aside, and it might go up and down of its own, but for sure not because of this reason.
A huge statement from Vikas Khemani coming in. Vikas, I hope you will come back tomorrow and you will speak to us. And I hope the Indian investor proves you right and proves Hindenburg wrong. But just stay on with us for 1 second. Sunil Subramaniam also joining in. Sunil, you've looked at all the conversations, you've looked at all the statements. I want to ask you, do you see any merit in the allegations?
No, I think that prima facie, it doesn't seem to be, it's more like a witch hunt rather than a factual thing. I think that it's a reaction to the show cause notice, and they want to, I wouldn't say divert the attention, but I think that they want to protect their client list. You see, what happened in the previous Adani disclosure that they did, their clients couldn't make much money. And remember, this Hindenburg thing, they are neither a non-profit nor are they an investor protection company. Okay, the main thing is to make money for themselves and for their clients. The shorts they take, they're supposed to disclose. And SEBI's show cause notice also says that they have not done the proper disclosure of the shorts, and they want a response for that. Besides this, their customers would have also, see, when the beauty of this whole thing is what, when they release the report, before that, they would have given the intimation to their customers to take positions. And then the report gets released, the market reacts, that's when they make money. So I think that this is a bit to restore their credibility, that help their customers make money by releasing some news which can create some kind of a panic, and hence their customers can take short positions and make money off it. So to me, from having read the Hindenburg report as well as both two disclosures by the SEBI chairman, I'm convinced that this is more like kind of a defense, just putting up a defense to divert the issue. The main thing is they still have not replied to the show cause notice on the previous matter.
So that's an important part. They haven't replied to the show cause notice. Vikas, I want to come back to the first thing you said in your statement about how this is really an attempt to shake up the faith of investors in Indian markets. I mean, just on Friday, you've had the highest SIP contributions in the history of Indian equities at 23,000 crore rupees. The number of households who have reposed faith in Indian equities is larger than ever before. And then something like this comes in. Now, there are two ways of looking at it. One is that, of course, if there is any concern in the system, we should address it, right? And the other one is that this is a concerted attempt at attacking that faith.
There are two issues. If you ask me 10 things, I will tell you what to do in improvement in our system. That's a very different thing. I'm not saying our system is perfect. We will have 10 issues. But all I'm saying is that, this is not something done with the right agenda or no intention. It is vested interest driving the agenda. I think markets have moved much beyond that. our markets are far, far more matured. I think Indian investors have expressed the faith in Indian markets over last decade, and it is only getting better and bigger. And SEBI has done a fabulous job in protecting the minority shareholder, retail shareholder, their interest through various mechanisms, regulatory framework, transparency, disclosure, governance, So I have no doubt that Indian markets are very, very robust. We have best systems, right? So, let's not link again two things. I think Indian market story, we will keep improving. We are not perfect. We will keep improving. We will do much better. We are much better than many other markets. My only limited point is that don't connect these two things. We can have a separate discussion what we need to do to improve our Indian markets and Indian regulatory system. That's a very different conversation. But somebody coming and highlighting that our governance standards are poor, SEBI chairperson is conflicted, we are not doing it. And this is all complete baloney in my opinion. I think one needs to be just ignored. And I think markets will ignore it tomorrow.
Yeah. What to do tomorrow now is a question that we must answer for our viewers. Sunil, for people watching who are wondering what is going to happen in the market, should they go long, should they go short, what should they do when there's volatility? What is your advice?
So I would say to both an SIP investor and to a mutual fund investor, there's no need to panic. Individual equity stock investors, to the extent that they have been buying stocks based on fundamental approach, not a technical based approach, I would say any correction in their holding, they should add to it tomorrow, because good quality stocks have all become very expensive over the last years, 2 years, because of the liquidity flow. And any correction there means you're getting good quality stocks at a cheaper price. So any correction, they should buy good quality, fundamental, sound stocks. At this stage, mutual funds, they will obviously act with caution, and they will continue to buy good quality stocks when there's a correction. So buy on dips is the strategy which will play out well. And I think that this episode, we will soon overcome it. And hence, long-term investors should not panic. If they have free liquid cash, 1% or 2% of their cash they can actually deploy when there's a correction, but make sure that you're buying good quality businesses. That fundamental factor one shouldn't forget even in this time, because there are some things which ran upon technical which could correct far more sharply, but they shouldn't jump in to buy that which has corrected a lot, but rather buy good quality companies even if they don't correct that much.
Vikas, same question to you. What should investors do tomorrow if there is volatility on markets opening?
And I think keep doing what you should do normally. I agree with that. If it falls for this reason, buy, no doubt. And anyway, India is in one of the best transformative phase. I have no doubt about it. India will create unprecedented amount of wealth over the next 8-10 years. And hence, any correction opportunity for this reason or any other reason, which are these kind of emotional or sentimental, I think must be used to buy and invest into. Of course, you need to do your work on the stock, research sector. I'm not doing it, but in general speaking, I think any such correction, if it comes because of these kind of reasons, is a great opportunity to buy.
Hindenburg gets singed if their report is ignored. Vikas Khemani and Sunil Subramaniam, thank you. I'm speaking now on the legal angle. Sanjay Ashar, Senior Partner, Crawford Bailey, with me on the show. I'm also speaking with Jay Anant Dehadrai, Advocate in the Supreme Court. Sandeep Ghosh also, of course, with us. Jay, let me start with you, and thank you for joining in. Now, just prima facie, looking at the set of allegations and looking at what SEBI's own policies and regulations say, is there a case to ask Madhabi Puri Buch for more transparency, more rigor, more details today? Is there any merit at all that you see from any angle in what Hindenburg is saying?
Tamanna, firstly, thank you for calling me on your show. And if you just give me a moment, then I'd just like to frame it a little differently. There was a problem with the audio, so I didn't have the benefit of listening to your other very distinguished guests. But I will tell you this, that this entire issue has already gone to the Supreme Court once. There has been a massive inquiry that took place under the stewardship of a former Supreme Court judge, one of the most respected, Justice Sapre. They found nothing wrong. They returned that report, the Supreme Court accepted it, and this was sometime earlier this year. And please remember, the first Hidenburg report came in January of 2023. So if anything, Indian investors, those holding Adani stocks, and I want to make this very clear as for full disclosure, I hold no brief for the Adani Group. I don't even own a single share of Adani. So it makes no difference to me. But I will tell you this, that tomorrow when markets open, even from a layperson's perspective as a lawyer, I can tell you that this is a storm in a teacup. There is absolutely no material, no merit in this so-called report which I've read, which tries to, on the basis of innuendo and insinuation, tries to paint the Buch couple as though they had some conflict of interest or that they were involved with the Adanis. I don't think there is any merit to it at all. In fact, even the Supreme Court, and I must point this out very vehemently, I must say this: the Indian Supreme Court is extremely robust, and we've had, in fact, I have appeared myself in a public interest litigation against a large automotive component manufacturer, in which the Supreme Court directed an ED and CBI inquiry, and it turned out that there was a 30,000 crore loan scam that had taken place. So you have a very robust judiciary that is at play here, and they're not afraid of anybody. There is no fear or favor here. So if there was any material that the Hindenburg chaps had, which if it had any credibility, they should have come to India, filed a criminal complaint, gone to SEBI, and if SEBI had not acted, then they should have filed a PL and come to the Supreme Court. So what do they do now? This entire exercise is aimed at destroying reputations, right? The whole objective is to somehow or the other destabilize the Indian economy, and perhaps for political gain and for monetary gain. We already know this. I mean, after all, these are short sellers. These aren't some good Samaritans who are trying to help the Indian economy. So when they failed on the first occasion, right, when they targeted a particular company, it didn't work, the charges didn't stick, Supreme Court gave a clean chit. What do you do then? Then you come back around the second time, and then you attack the institutions. You attack the regulator itself. And I read those. I mean, when the whole build-up to it was so sinister, Tamanna. I mean, if you read that tweet that they first put out as though this is the launch of some blockbuster film, they say something big is coming. Why create this ridiculous sensationalism? If you have something meritorious, come out and put it out, give it to the investigating agencies, come to India, file a case. But you have these individuals who have been discredited, who are in fact facing an inquiry themselves by SEBI. What do they do in reaction? So it's like, when we were kids and, your teacher said something and said that you performed poorly, you would go back to your parents at home and you'd say, well, it's the teacher's fault. This is exactly what these people are doing. They have no love for the Indian investor. They're trying to profit off the misery of Indian investors. And if you really ask me, I think it is also the failure of Indian investigating agencies. They're letting down Indian investors. They should find out who these short sellers are, identify them. There is a provision under the SEBI Act, under Section 11, and there are very distinguished corporate lawyers on this panel, and they will agree with me. Under Section 11 of the SEBI Act, you have the ability to disgorge those profits which someone has made illegally. So now the question really that I ask myself is this, that why don't the Indian investigating agencies do a proper full-fledged inquiry and find out who the main actors abroad are, who are orchestrating this entire, scam, I would call it a scam, and figure out who the allies are in India who are trying to gain either monetary or political profit out of this entire, this scam. And this group has no credibility in my mind at all. And tomorrow morning, I have no doubt that this will amount to a storm in a teacup. The Indian investor is an extremely, extremely incisive being. They understand what report is legitimate. They understand which allegations are motivated. So I frankly think there is going to be zero impact on this tomorrow on the markets, and let alone on the Adani stock. And I do hope that our agencies expose these people who've made money or who are trying to make money in this really malintentioned way. So from the legal perspective, just to sum it up very quickly, from the legal perspective, Tamanna, I can tell you with great confidence, I've seen that report. It's just innuendo, trying to throw mud at people's reputations. And there's absolutely no merit or meat in those allegations at all. I mean, I had put out a tweet yesterday in which I had said that no court in the world, anywhere in the world, which has any credibility, would even take cognizance of such material if it came before it in the form of a complaint.
Right.
So what do? You sit on the East Coast, you sit in the US, and you put out this report, you sensationalize it, and you hope that there's a big dhamaka that takes place in India Monday morning.
Right.
So I think these people need to be prosecuted.
Right, Jai. This is Vishwanath joining in. I want to bring it back to the point you mentioned earlier. This case or these allegations against Adani Group have already been debated to death in the Supreme Court. Does a report like this, which brings that discussion back and then points fingers at the people who are actually investigating that matter. Doesn't that also sort of try to play people against the Supreme Court's own decision-making?
You ask an excellent question. And the answer lies in the chronology of what transpired after the first Hindenburg report came out. Please look at it like this. The report comes out. There is Supreme Court doesn't say that we will not look into it. They appoint an expert committee. The finest minds in India who understand security law are recruited into this committee, including judges, one former judge of the Supreme Court, with unimpeachable integrity. Everything is gone into threadbare, into great detail. And they come back and say that there is nothing amiss. Now, please look at what happens right after. And therein lies the answer, where the malintention is, which I referred to earlier. After a clean chit is given, Hindenburg keeps completely quiet. In fact, I think their investors must have lost money, gone after the principles of Hindenburg. And now, with their tail between their legs, they come back with another ridiculous innuendo-laden report. And I'll tell you where my disgust comes in as an Indian. More than any individual company or targeting a person, this is an attack on India's institutions, as though we are some third world country where we have to listen to some colonial style power which will tell us how to conduct an inquiry or tell us about the health of our corporate governance structures. We don't need lessons in corporate governance from these individuals.
If I were to, I get your point completely. But if I were to even look at it this way, that we are a system that wants to be robust, wants to constantly improve. And I'm going to bring in Sanjay Asher here. And, we need to understand this very clearly legally. At the end of the day,
Before you go to Mr. Asher, if I may just say one thing very quickly. Tamanna, the point is, of course, there is always room for improvement.
Yeah.
But it has to come in the form of some credible material. You just can't you can't pass off innuendo as high quality evidence or material and then expect the courts or the regulator to unleash a fishing and roving inquiry because it serves the political agenda of a few people in India and it fills the pockets of certain short sellers sitting in the US. It can't be on that basis. Right?
The thing is, the important thing and the crucial thing is that who is really going to suffer? There's politics, there's innuendo, it'll all go on and on. Think of the Indian retail investor who gets hammered by all of this, who has no voice, who has no union, who has no vote bank for any political party, and no one thinks of them.
I disagree. I have a slight difference in opinion there, which is that the Indian investor is a very smart creature. You can try and fool him once, you can't fool him twice. And I don't think this second time around, this report, nobody is going to buy into Hindenburg. It's lost all credibility. They kept quiet for the longest time after their claims were debunked in the first round of investigation. Supreme Court gave a clean chit, they kept quiet. Now they've gone and dug up something which has absolutely no head or tail. There's no evidence of any wrongdoing, any favors, nothing. And they come and try and make these, long short connections.
I'm going to take that point. Sanjay Asher, evidence of wrongdoing and favors. At the crux of the allegation is this attempt to say that there is some favor, there is some, kind of reason why SEBI is not investigating in the direction that Hindenburg wants, and it's because there was investment in this one particular fund. Does this make for any kind of a case? Because as per their own paperwork that they've put forward, the Buch couple, Madhabi and Dhaval, have not even made money on those investments. They've come out of it. This is, if this was a favor, this seems to be like the worst favor possible, just on the basis of what the allegations are.
To my mind, what they have done, the Hidenburg guys, is ludicrous. It's not ridiculous, but it's ludicrous. They have absolutely made a very, very failed attempt to try to paint SEBI or the chairperson of SEBI in a very poor light. Unfortunately, this is not going to hold water even to a layman. And I must say that there has to be a system whereby somebody, and the Buch couple should file a defamation suit against this Hidenburg institution. They have painted them black N, rather they made an attempt to paint them black N, and without doing any diligence, without bringing out proper facts, and the facts are also absolutely incorrect facts. Number two, I've again, even in the first time around when the report had come out, I had stated that, look, it's high time that before a report, there has to be a discipline to the institution which is coming out with the report. And just in case, if that particular report turns out to be factually incorrect, then there has to be a huge fine and huge penalty should be imposed on that particular institution. Now, one would argue to say that how can you govern somebody who is sitting in the US and writes a report on Hidenburg? But we need to find a way out as to how do we penalize them and how the regulator puts some element of penalty on this Hidenburg report. And thirdly, you touched upon the small investors or the individual investors or the retail investors. As Jay articulated and as Vikas also articulated, they are very smart. They are absolutely on the top of everything. And there have been enough litigation initiated by the small investors. And I won't be surprised if there would be plethora of petitions filed in several courts against Hidenburg for the purposes of misdirecting a common man, misdirecting even the institutional investors, so on and so forth. So to my mind, there is nothing at all in this particular report, and surely they should be penalized. Okay. And as Jay articulated, it's just a Tom in the teacup.
Okay, let me play devil's advocate with Sandeep Ghosh. Because Sandeep, in our chat before the show, you did tell me that you know Dhaval very well. So, one section of viewers today will say, oh, Sandeep is biased. Everyone is biased. So, if I were to play devil's advocate, I would ask you that for a position like SEBI chairperson, there should be completely above board. Is there any question of whether this was just a coincidence? Why have they invested here? Why aren't they giving a conclusion that the guys who wrote the Hindenburg report want?
See, as far as that is concerned, I think their second statement today was Dhaval and Madhabi have set out, and Dhaval has explained how he went into it with his, who was managing the fund, his school friend, etc., and how they got out of it. It was done much before, and how they got out of it as soon as Madhabi was taking over this responsibility. I think those things make it absolutely clear. Everybody understands that this is a very, very long shot and a very tenuous case that Hidenburg wanted to build up to divert attention from their main thing. Is it, using a language which Anand and our legal colleagues lawyer colleagues would be using, admitting without, accepting without admitting, if assuming this was true, how does it detract from the original, Heidelberg's play with the short selling and the rest of it, and all the other acquisitions were there? It is like almost today, as Anand again very rightly put it, is you get caught in some offense and then you point at the policeman saying, oh, the policeman was looking the other way at one time. So that is, very frivolous. I think the larger points which come across, see how people were just simply waiting for this thing to be published, and the next moment, a lot of politicians just splashed their statements even before the country had woken up. And you find the whole bunch of people jumping into the fray and moving away from the substantive issue of what Hindenburg did or didn't do, and piling on to Madhabi and Dhaval Buch and asking for the scalp and the head. So this all shows, I think, a very, very, sordid intentions. Now, for a moment, but what, as Anand was saying again, I am intrigued by, look at the amount of resources and energy which has been put into digging into stuff, trying to dig out stuff, dirt out of their records. They have accessed Madhavi's Gmail account to get something. Now, what is our investigating agencies doing? There has been so much of evidence which has been put in public domain by various people. Now, why haven't they been able to progress on it in this time? And that is what I think is disheartening. Today, we are unfortunately in a situation when I said on your other channel earlier, it's a no-win situation for the administration. People first go to Supreme Court. If Supreme Court gives a judgment against the government, everybody says, oh, Supreme Court is great. And if they don't get a favorable judgment, then you come out and then you try to create another controversy or something to just derail that judgment and make that questionable. And I think this really points out to a larger conspiracy which goes beyond any individual, beyond even the current government. I think it is a conspiracy against India's economic rise and the clout and how our stock markets have been doing investment. And that is where I think that the country has to wake up. I'm not taking any political sides. It's not can be nobody's case that investigation should not be done, even if, despite what Dhaval and Madhabi have said. By all means, do an inquiry. But you cannot make them the fall guys and, make them the martyrs or scapegoats of this situation. Then how will you attract the right kind of talent into these institutions? And I think this
just on that point, Sandeep, just on that point, how do you get the talent in these institutions? There's a lot of chatter today about what Madhabi Puri Buch's salary is as the SEBI chairperson. I mean, she has had a 30-plus year of experience, worked in some of the highest positions in corporate India and in corporates around the world, in Singapore as well. Really, this is someone who cares about what happens to the capital markets who's coming and doing this job. The fact is that Madhabi Puri Buch is the first woman chairperson of SEBI. I'm sorry, I'm adding that angle because I think it's part of it. No one likes strong, aggressive women who have made large parts of this market stand up and take notice.
See, and what Madhabi, as Dhaval said, they are very cleverly putting up a designation called Chief Procurement Officer as if he's some purchase head somewhere. He was a supply chain head of Unilever. First, he was the manufacturing director in India. Then he moved into Unilever. That's a huge position. And you earn, the kind of money. They don't need these kind of small changes. And, on a lighter note, since you did mention, I know Dhaval from a long time, we were the same batch, we joined as management trainees in levers, but coincidentally, Blackstone was brought into the picture, and partly for education or entertainment of your listeners, I'll say Blackstone was brought into India by Akhil Gupta, who was a management trainee in Hindustan Lever, though a very close friend of the Ambanis. He set up Blackstone in India. India Infoline, which you're talking about, was actually founded by one of our younger colleagues who was also a management trainee in Levers, Nirmal Jain. And now you're trying to rope in Dhaval. Apart from Dhaval, a lot of our other colleagues went on and advisors to Blackstone and many other, but they don't move and decide on investment, for heaven's sake. They are taken on there as advisors for their particular domain expertise. Somebody goes there for his marketing expertise. Anand Kripalu, who was the chairman of Diageo, and gets on the board like that. Sudhanshu Vats gets into it for his media expertise. Dhaval has got into for his. That is, people understand this. So how crazy it is for people to, try to make this tenuous dots and say that, oh, how could he have got into Blackstone?
No, my question is, why would any professional come and face this hassle to help the Indian equity markets? You'll get on with your life. You don't want to be in the limelight. I have to take Jay wants to come in. I have to take a short break. But Jay, I'll just get your point on this.
Quickly, I just wanted to say this. I agree with what Mr. Ghosh has said, but I have a slight difference of opinion on one thing. If you have a motivated party coming in from the US, which just wants to do profiteering, you can't simply on the basis of innuendo even launch an inquiry, which is what I said earlier, that certain individuals can have a perception. On that perception, you cannot launch a fishing and roving inquiry, and the Supreme Court has held this in multiple cases. We have one unfortunate incident where there's already been a full-fledged inquiry. Now, after that inquiry is already done, we've restored investor confidence. Now, this malicious actor wants to come back. Now, besmirch the reputation of, our institutions. I don't think we should give in to it. Unless there is some credible evidence or material, there is no question of any inquiry or investigation. Why should they be put through it? This is a classic witch hunt, and we should object to it. We should push back.
It is a classic witch hunt, but who really is the target? I'm going to take a very short break and we're going to talk about it. A lot of conspiracy theories. You know, is there any reality to this conspiracy theory? Is it part of a huger picture? What does Hindenburg really want? Is it only about short selling and profits? We're coming back with all of that after this very short break. But as we go into the break, just listen in to what J.N. Gupta, former executive director of SEBI, said about the allegations.
When the first Hindenburg report came, people got into panic mode and they reacted. As a result, most of the Anani staff suffered badly. But about 15 months down the line, I think, since I do not follow all those stocks, so I think most of the stocks have recovered all that they had lost, and maybe some have gone beyond that. That is one. Second, when it came, they talked about Kotak. Again, there was a minor impact, but then that impact has also died down. Now, these two experiences are enough for any market person to understand that these are all reports without any substance, aim to cause sensation, aim to cause loss to people, and people should safeguard themselves from such people and not get into panic.
Alright, you're joining this special show on NDTV Profit. We're talking about the Hindenburg hit job, and really, has it been punctured? Minhas Merchant, author, editor and publisher, joining us now on the show. Mr. Merchant, pleasure to speak with you, and thank you so much for your time. I'm just trying to understand. I'm just trying to understand what Hindenburg has tried to investigative journalist got you this story as an editor, what would you say? And really, just on the fact, because they're two separate set of facts, right, which Hindenburg has tried to link and tried to turn it into a big conspiracy.
That's right. Now, Tamanna, as an editor, and I've had 2 media companies and hired hundreds of editors, the first thing you do when an investigative report comes in is to fact-check everything. And as far as Hindenburg is concerned, they're not journalists. They're basically money makers. They are short sellers. And they've been doing this for a long time. They're a small unit of 4 or 5 people. Now, the direct trigger for this particular second round was SEBI's show cause notice. Went to them in the end of June. They received it in the first week of July, the 1st or 2nd of July. And, the show cause notice by SEBI is about how Hindenburg, before and after the publicly released report, the first report, which was released in January of 2023, just before that and after that, they started trading in Adani Group shares. So they shorted the shares before the report was released, which is the worst kind of insider trading. Then they released the report, the damaging but unsubstantiated allegations. And then they bought, obviously, at a cheaper price and made a profit. They did not expect SEBI or anyone else to question them. What is the source of your information, the allegations? Finally, the Supreme Court rubbished everything in January of this year. There was a complete clearance given, and not many people know that as far back as December, Tamanna, you with me? Hello?
Yes,
Hello?
yes, go ahead, Mr. Merchant. I'm listening to you.
So as far back as December of 2023, the American government looked at these Hindenburg allegations for about 11 months, from January to December, and gave a loan of $553 million to the Adani Group, $500 million, to the Adani Group for the container port in Sri Lanka. And they said clearly that none of these allegations have any particular relevance. So Hindenburg, after it was served the show cause notice about a month and a half ago, they said, oh, how dare SEBI, a third world regulator, question us, we Anglo-Saxon money makers. This is our birthright. We're supposed to short sell. We're supposed to do insider trading. There's a long history of Milken and so on and so forth in America. America was built on this in Wall Street and outside Wall Street.
Mr. Merchant, let me come to the show cause notice by SEBI to Hindenburg, because that seems to be the latest trigger of it. Now, what Hindenburg is saying is that we have a standard disclosure that we're short sellers. What else does SEBI want? And they seem to be extremely upset at the show cause notice, right? Hence, this whole sequence of events. So just explain that to us, yes.
They want evidence. All the allegations that they made about the Adani Group complicity, with Vinod Adani, etc. They want hardcore evidence. And Hindenburg, okay, they said we are thieves. That's not really a defense. We are short sellers, and that's it's a disclosure that we make, that we are in it to make money, even if it harms others on the basis of no evidence, not on the basis of good evidence. So it went to the Supreme Court after the SEBI investigation. And the Supreme Court, which is not particularly well inclined towards anybody in this government, in the current business dispensation, and so on, came to the conclusion, as we all know, that no, there's no merit in these allegations. So the show cause notice was basically SEBI telling them that, look, Supreme Court's looked at everything. Now we want you to tell us, not that you disclose that you're a money-making company and you sell short and you disclose it. That's no excuse. But tell us your evidence. And that's what got Hindenburg upset, because they don't have evidence. The Supreme Court said they have no evidence, which is substantial. And this triggered the reaction. Within a month, they got an anonymous whistleblower with all these allegations, which came out yesterday. And they basically were counter-punching, because they didn't expect SEBI to get after them with that show cause notice. That was an insult to them. They tried to bring in the Kotak angle, in the first week of July, as soon as he got the show cause notice, saying, oh, the K Opportunities Fund had been mentioned, not Kotak himself, because there's complicity, SEBI, it's all scratch my back, etc., etc. It's India, third world country, and they. It's also
about Hindenburg giving the information of their initial report, the first short selling report, to their clients before they release it publicly. So you've allowed your clients to take short positions in advance.
Absolutely. This is the worst kind, as I said about 4 minutes ago, the worst kind of insider trading.
Yeah.
And just saying that, we are insider traders, is like a thief saying, look, I'm going to rob your ATM.
Right.
You better be there vigilant. And because I disclose that I'm an ATM thief, once I do the thieving, it's okay. That's what they're saying, basically, that kind of, analogy.
It puts it down well. Thank you so much, Minhas Merchant, for joining us and putting it in that perspective. Now, clearly, this has become a political issue. I mean, you have to look at the story from so many angles. It impacts Indian equities. It impacts the ecosystem. Of course, it impacts the retail investor and those who have put their money in SIPs, in mutual funds as well. But it also has political ramifications. Listen into some of the political reactions coming in today.
सदन के साथ हिंडनबर्ग की रिपोर्ट, जो कि स्वयं भारतीय जांच एजेंसियों की जांच के घेरे में है, जिस ढंग से जोड़ने का प्रयास विपक्ष ने किया है, उससे एक बात बहुत साफ हो गई है कि ये 7 समंदर पार कौन से स्वर उठते हैं जिसके कि ये ताल मिलाना विपक्ष के लोग यहां शुरू कर देते हैं। पिछले कई वर्षों से हमने देखा है कि जब जब भारत में संसद का सत्र शुरू होता है या चल रहा होता है, उसी समय विपक्ष से कोई रिपोर्ट आती है। हिंडनबर्ग की पिछली रिपोर्ट जनवरी 2023 में आई थी, बजट सत्र से ठीक 1 या 2 दिन पहले। उससे पहले आप याद करिए, बीबीसी की डॉक्यूमेंट्री बजट सत्र से ठीक 1-2 दिन पहले आई थी। उससे पहले रिलीजियस फ्रीडम वाली एक रिपोर्ट आ गई थी। उससे पहले आप याद करिए, किसान आंदोलन के ऊपर टिप्पणी आ गई थी। उससे पहले कभी ग्रेटा थनबर्ग का बयान आ जाता है। तो मेरे विचार से ये शक बहुत गहरा हो जाता है, और अब जो विपक्ष के मुंह से निकल गया है, इसका मतलब उन्हें ये पता था या उन्हें आभास था कि सत्र के दौरान ही ऐसा कुछ होने वाला है।
फैलाना, देश को विवादित मामलों में उलझाना, प्रधानमंत्री जी एक मशाल लेकर, भारतीय जनता पार्टी का एक एक कार्यकर्ता एक मशाल लेकर देश को विकास और प्रगति के मार्ग पर चला रहा है। कांग्रेस केवल भटकाने की कोशिश, अंधेरे में रखने की कोशिश, जो उनकी पद्धति रही है इतने वर्षों से, उसी पद्धति पे कांग्रेस चल रही है।
Obviously expect this to become a huge political issue, and it will continue as it is. But Sandeep Ghosh, let me come to the conversation that we've been having about whether there is something larger to this story. And I'm not one who loves conspiracy theories, to be honest, but there seems to be a pattern in what Hindenburg is doing. Is it profit? And some of the people I've been speaking to since morning to understand this issue clearly also says that, look, at the end of the day, they're short sellers. This is their job, right? To make money for themselves and their clients. That's what they did the first time round as well. Is this about profits? Is it about short selling, or is there something more to it?
That's the point, Tamanna. I think we'll be letting them go quite easy if we just explain that, they're short sellers, they've been doing it elsewhere and they're making money. But you see the amount, what I was mentioning earlier, the amount of effort they're investing in this, the kind of, concerted, it's almost orchestrated things, and FT filing reports simultaneously, different, other, whether it's media or other agencies, then politicians jumping onto the bandwagon. It seems much larger than the bare, a short seller trying to make a quick buck in a market and go away. And also the point, Hindenburg, a lot of people say, why is Adani not suing them in the US? We all know the kind of immunity they would enjoy over there, and the fallouts of such litigation and where they really get. But why is Hindenburg therefore afraid of a show cause notice issued by SEBI? Instead of answering that, they're deflecting the whole issue in another direction. And as I said before, even if we assume for a minute that there are certain, anything of conflict of interest or the other thing is established against Madhabi Puri Buch, but does that in any way absolve Hindenburg for all the things they have done in the short selling market and how they manipulated the Indian stock market, caused humongous loss to people, while some of their clients have made money, and all of that which they have done. If assuming, as I said, if there is a minor aberration in what, a technical aberration in what Madhabi and Dhaval may have done.
So Sandeep, just to understand clearly, short selling is not illegal, right? But to create a situation where your short positions become lucrative by causing fear and questions, you know, is that where the question really is? That you are first taking a short position and then you're trying to create the circumstances for that short position to really go through, because it's a bet, right? When you go short or when you go long, you're taking a bet.
And when you are manipulating everybody else to get the market down so that you can make that money, you know, that is what they're manipulating the market through those innuendos and misinformation or whatever is coming out. And that's how you're doing. So that's where the criminality lies. And that's precisely it. But precisely what you are saying, by just simply calling them quote unquote short seller, you're actually making it light, saying, okay, there are short sellers in the market. There are so many short sellers, as if that's nothing unusual. If somebody is clever, they can do that. But this larger economic, mischief, fraud, or whatever you want to call it, that is not getting highlighted. And now you're deflecting that for something as petty as this, which I'm not for a moment saying is correct. Means correct in the sense the facts are true, but people will just get deflected. So that's why today, you see, nobody will remember those days when they, Madhabi and Dhaval had sold that thing, their stakes in IIFL, what IIFL did or not did. People will not get these are the facts which will get blown up, and the entire issue will get diverted.
This is what happens. Kuch to hai. People, the facts are too tedious. The point is that the facts are too tedious. We've tried to put them out in this show, and I hope that people will listen to it and come to their own conclusion. But the thing is that facts are tedious. People go by the innuendos, and they find comfort in saying, "Acha, kuch to gadbad hogi."
My trip, therefore, Tamanna, I don't want anybody to take sides. Everybody doesn't have to support a Madhabi Buch or an Adani for that matter. But stick to the facts and argue on the basis of the facts. And I'm talking here about professionals, people who are in your trade, who understand these aspects of, the markets, or whether it's financial. Let them stick to the facts instead of they are, spreading innuendos. Why shouldn't she resign? Why is this happening? And that is unfair, I think. Ask whatever the right questions, ask for inquiries.
We live in a world of loudspeakers, and everyone has one in their hand because of social media. That's absolutely fine. All facts, all opinions and comments should be there in the public domain. But don't confuse an agenda with what the facts are. And, that's something which everyone needs to find out for themselves. We've tried to make things clearer in this program. Thank you so much, Sandeep. Thank you to all our guests who've joined us today on the program. We'll wait and see what happens in the Indian markets tomorrow when markets open. And of course, if you want to be on top of all the news and advice on what to do in the